Does anybody else have those voices in their head? Has anyone else ever tried to fire them? Part of what we do here in this teaching is rewrite that script, rewrite what the voices in our head have to say to us or about us. And part of the Say Their Names movement was about rewriting the script. In our country, with the news, basically if it bleeds, it leads, right? So we end up having a barrage of bad news. I have yet to see CNN stop regular TV reporting because puppies were born safely. Or because somebody got their braces off, right? And yet this is the little stuff of which life is made. And so when we started hearing Say Their Names, what was being called for was stop saying the names of killers and start talking about the lives of the people who were actually the victims of crime. It's a great shift to go from how much we hate these people or how much we're going to judge and blame these people to these are people who we can see them as having had full lives. Even if it's a move from hatred to pain, it's still a step up, right? One is better than the other. In religious science, what we talk about is those voices in our heads that This is the real reason I want to be done with masks. I want to be able to wear earrings again. In religious science, part of what we do is we shift our focus from our pain to whatever the next step up is. So if you have been depressed, if you have been dealing with depression, and a lot of people coming out of 2020, having been isolated, are dealing with some anxiety and depression. Yes, I mean, we can admit that without the world ending. And one of the things I know with my background in psychology is that if you can get somebody from depressed to angry, that's actually a step up. It's a step into a greater energy, a higher level of energy. Now, you don't want to leave them angry for too long. That, you end up with ulcers and stuff that way. Because then we step up into a greater energy again. So I want to spend some time talking about a woman named Kathy Donnelly. Does anyone know her or her work? Yes, you do, because I'm her. Once upon a time, it was a whole nother wife. My name was Kathy Donnelly. And I would look in the mirror and see somebody who didn't make enough money, definitely wasn't skinny enough to make her husband happy, wasn't working hard enough, hadn't gotten the master's degree, much less the PhD, wasn't ready to have kids, wasn't, can't, all sorts of negative stuff. And so, part of my divorce process was in recreating myself into someone I liked. And one of the things that I had decided to try was changing my name. Go from Kathy, which was my girlhood name, to being a full-on woman in my own right and insisting on being called Kathleen. It took me years to get people to call me Kathleen, and you know what it took? Stop answering when they say Kathy. Even if they are the public defender of San Diego, even if they are some muckety-muck, if you will not answer to the old name, they will check and see if they have the right name eventually. There's nothing wrong with Kathy. One of my heroes is Reverend Dr. Kathy Hearn. And after a while, I got to the point where if somebody called me Kathy, I would just correct them and say, that's Dr. Kathy Hearn in my head. And to me, Kathy is a positive name now. It's just not mine. So when I was in the midst of the divorce and trying to figure out who to be or who I wanted to be in a conscious act, I decided to let go of my married name, which was Donnelly. I liked Donnelly because it was closer to the front of the alphabet, and therefore I get called on sooner when things had to be done. Yes, I went to Catholic school. Everything was alphabetical. But somehow Donnelly wasn't me, and when I thought about going back to Sibley, I'm like, but that's my dad's name. It's not my name. It's not my name. And I sincerely considered becoming Kathleen Ann and using my middle name as, not just because it starts with A, but making that to be all me. There is power in a name. Anyone who's ever read sci-fi fantasy knows that if you know someone's true secret name, you can make them appear anytime you want. It doesn't just work on Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice. Who says you can't have fun on Sunday mornings? So if you think about it, there are many traditions where people take on a new name. When people go on a vision quest and become an adult, in many cultures, they get a new name. When they go from childhood and become an adult, they let go of their child name and become an adult with a different name. The Pope takes on a new name. Depending on what part of America you're in, he might have lots of different names. Nuns take on new names. When we have a major shift in our life, often we have to change our name because the shift in consciousness, the shift in who we are, is so complete. And so I was going to name myself after one of my sheroes, who is Anne Agby. I also considered Agby because it's a family name, but Anne Agby was born at the very beginning of the 20th century or late 19th century. She was a child bride that came to America in an arranged marriage. And one of the things she decided is that all of her children, not just the one boy, but all of her children would have a career. And so she raised a CPA, she raised a nurse, she raised a college professor, and the nurse was actually my grandmother, my Nana. The college professor was the one that I took after. You've heard me talk about Auntie Helen or Tia, who got Spanish into the public schools in Massachusetts. Our heroes tell us something about who we are. It doesn't matter to you at all that Annie Agby had an arranged marriage, or that she adored her husband, or that she cured his high cholesterol and heart disease with parsley. That's not going to make a difference in what you have for dinner when you go home tonight, probably, right? Maybe. What matters is that in my family, because I know their names and I know their story and I share in their nature, I understand why education is hugely important to me. I understand that I have a long history of ancestresses who are standing in the idea that a woman can hold her own in this world no matter what the rest of the world says. Amen. And that, if you are, I haven't figured out how to make this thing stay awake for long. Luckily, I know how to make you guys stay awake for long, and that's far more important to my career. I hope. And so I would suggest to you that we honor those who came before us, our grandparents, our great-grandparents. We study history because our heroes can tell us a little bit about who we are and who we want to be. It was Auntie Helen that taught me the stories about a man by the name of Khalil Gibran, who wrote a book called The Prophet, which some of you might have read. That was her cousin. She lived with his sister Miriana and their brothers and sisters Zakia and Charlie. Now, to me, these people were just somebody I saw at a funeral, every so very, please God, rarely. To her, they were real people, and it was my touch with history. And it helped me understand why mysticism appeals to me. It runs in the family. The other thing that runs in the family is horses, but that's a whole different side of the family, and Kelly got that one. When we do things in religious science, one of the things we know is that we are made in the image and likeness of God. That's the Judeo-Christian way of saying it. That the name is the nature. Name and nature are the same thing. if we're made in the image and likeness of God, in the name of God, then we share in the nature of this thing we call God. And so, as Emma Curtis Hopkins once wrote, in my name preach the gospel, in my name heal the sick. That's what Jesus, the master teacher, told us to do. In my name preach the gospel, in my name heal the sick. What name was that which Jesus Christ used, which had such omnipotent energy that even when it was spoken, it would heal the sick and raise the dead? What name was he calling on in order to do these great things, which, by the way, we're all supposed to be doing according to the instructions he left us, yes? We can heal the sick. Did you know that you can do that? You have permission, you have the ability. We happen to use a 5-step type of prayer that helps us get into the mindset in which we claim that power and work from that place within us that knows itself as part of God. Jesus said, the Father and I are one. The one that sent me, not me, but the Father within me, doeth the work. Those are all a Christian way of framing it. The Buddha had a whole different teaching. But what he said was, the things that I'm teaching you, you can do. Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him, also came here and said, these are the instructions on how to live. It was not meant to be, candid camera. Oh, we're going to get all these people to go out there and be nice to each other and love their enemies and everything, and it's all a great big joke. That's not what this is. The different religions, the different master consciousness that took form, that took on human form across time, we recognize them and we say their names because we know we share their nature. So, they can become a symbol. They can become something that's encoded in our DNA in such a way, encoded in our subconscious mind, such that we can call on the same power that we attribute to them. That's a little dangerous sometimes, guys. We are told that after a master teacher comes to earth, there's usually about 3 generations before the teaching starts losing its oomph. You can find that in sacred scripture. We lose our oomph. There is the master teacher who has a sacred, mystical experience and knows and understands the power of the one. And then there's a few generations after that one, their students, who have witnessed it in the master teacher or talked to the master teacher's individual students, and so they have the experience of that power. They see what we call miracles. After the 3rd generation, if we are not having our own mystical experiences, we no longer have the teacher right in front of us. And so what sometimes happens is that we look at that teacher and think they are different and special. That's what happened with Jesus. Many people will say Jesus Christ as if Christ is Jesus' last name. That's not how this works. Christ means the one who was anointed to do a particular thing. Does that make sense? So what if it's Hazel the Christ in our room? Or Kathleen the Christ? Or Jackson the Christ? Or Verl the Christ? Or whoever is out there online is the Christ and may or may not know it. What if we each take on that title as if it was a title like king or queen or CEO, CSO? I'm going to create that title right now. The chief spiritual officer of any particular group. We take those things on as a title because the title has power. If you walk in and realize that, you come in and you're interviewing for a job at a big corporation, and you realize that the CEO of the corporation happens to be manning the front desk so the receptionist can run off and grab some coffee, Are you going to talk to the CEO differently than you do the receptionist? Maybe. I would be a little intimidated. I'm sure that any one of us would be just as polite, right? We don't go yelling at the person at the front desk, right? All right. Yes, that's one of my pet peeves. People who do not tip because the food got done wrong, and hey, it's my microphone and you gave it to me. So there's power in titles. But the title itself is not where the real power lies. That's what we attribute the power to. Jesus said, not me, but the Father within me, the one within me, the infinite being, does the work. And so the end of that quotation by Emma is, in my name preach the gospel, in my name heal the sick. What name was it which Jesus Christ used, which had such omnipotent energy that even when it was spoken, it would heal the sick and raise the dead? The name is within every mind. Now we humans, we're so silly, we tend to fight over the name. We tend to fight over, is it God, is it Yahweh, is it Buddha, is it King Kong? It doesn't matter. How many of us have answered to different names in our lives? When you were one, did your mom call you the same name that your boss now calls you? One hopes not. And yet we seem to think that God will only recognize us if we call it by the right name and the right gender. It, he, she, us, them takes too long to say. I heard a song recently where God was identified solely as male, and I was just like, that just sounds weird to me now. But I was raised Catholic. Believe me, God was he for a very long time in my world. And that's okay, God works as a he too. There is a saying in Taoism that the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. The word is a symbol. A symbol is like a finger pointing to the moon. And we have a bad habit of looking at the finger rather than the moon. Anyone ever notice themselves doing that? We start revering the symbol as opposed to what it represents. We start giving credit to the symbol as opposed to what it really means. In Jewish tradition, especially the mystic part, we talk about Yahweh. But if you see it in the Jewish scripture, it is not spelled out. Nobody really knows how to say Yahweh out loud. They took all the vowels out on purpose. Because the secret name of the Most High has such power. You could call God potato. And yes, Ernest Holmes said that you could do that. And if you were thinking of the right symbol, if you were beyond words, knowing the divine being, that does live in you, by the way. If you could get your consciousness to where you are one with the divine, it doesn't matter what you call God. When you call on that energy and that power, it responds. She responds. They respond. And so when we say their names, we say all. There's actually a practice in Hinduism where you just keep repeating all the names of God that you know. If you ever watched the movie Gandhi, that was such a big deal. When he is shot, he says, "Oh God," which if you're speaking English and from an American tradition, it just sounds like he's going, "Oh my God, what just happened? It's awful." What he was doing was his spiritual practice. Rama, 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 Rama. Saying the name of God over and over again so that it becomes so habitual it's the last thing you will speak. Isn't that better than, "Oh God"? God, 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 God. It sounds like I am saying something bad. But we can make it a spiritual practice. And so I invite you today to think about that. What name do you call on, and what does it represent to you? Auntie Helen happened to like me because I purposely took Spanish so that she would. I wanted to be somebody's favorite, and so I made sure that Auntie Helen had reason to speak to me in Spanish. And I went and got all of her stories. And I made a point of turning her into the type of person I wanted to be in my head. Educated, able to take care of herself no matter what. She was the last of the sisters to live, so she was caring and kind and compassionate. She was also feisty as all heck, by the way. She was about this big with this much personality. It had to burst out sometimes. Think about the names you call on. Think about what they represent to you. And then say their names with all of the power that lives in them. When you call upon the name of God, by whatever name you use, say their names and say it knowing the meaning of the symbol that you are speaking. Yes? So, this is how we say their names. I come down here to pray, not just to mess with the camera person. Sorry. Because we're on an equal praying field down here. It's coming out of my mouth. But the same power that speaks me during prayer can speak any one of you, and does speak all of you. And so I invite you to go within with me right now. If that means you close your eyes or you soften your gaze, great. If it means you just get comfortable in your chair, fantastic. And in this moment, I come into the awareness that there is only now, and there is only God. That this energy of life that we sometimes call God, the energy of love itself, the power and presence that we all court, this thing called life, called love, called you, is fully present right here and right now. It is the thing that allowed Jesus to raise the dead. It is the thing that allowed the Buddha to find enlightenment. It is the thing that groups of women have called on as the goddess in the middle of the night. It is the very energy that allows children to be born and flowers to bloom and the sun to go around, or to appear to go around the earth, allows the earth to go around the sun every year. It is this same energy of pure and perfect life that is in the world as each of us right now. And so while I speak these words in the first person and say I am speaking of the overarching us, the oneness, the one mind, the one heart that is us, that is God as us. And what I know and claim for all of us is that this one mind, this one being, this one life is already perfect. And it is the divine within each and every one of us that has the power and is creating this world that works for everyone. That is absolute love. That is perfect peace. That is power. That is abundance. That is health. And so all of us have all of those good things right here and right now. And so I call them into our physical experience because they already exist in our spiritual truth. And I am so grateful to know that this is simply what spirit is and what it does and how it works. I am so grateful to know that the act of standing witness and calling the name is what calls it into my physical world. And this is not because I work harder and not because I deserve it more, but simply because this is how spirit works. And it is doing it right here and right now at all times and in all places. And so I allow this spoken word, I allow my word to go forth to become the law, to be made manifest. And this is simply what we do. And I release this word to the law, knowing it automatically becomes form, becomes a physical thing. And resting in that, I just sing praises and call it good. And together we affirm, and so it is.